Support WrestleTalk!
Bloody hell. Look, who knows what's going on, right, at this point, and what the state of WWE will even be in a few days. What we know is that Vince is back at the top of WWE, Stephanie is out. It is a constantly mutating situation, and trying to make any sense of it or release a video that won't immediately become out of date seems like a fool's game. Well, looks like April 1st has come early. I'm Adam from WrestleTalk, and here are 8 changes Vince McMahon could make to WWE in 2023. Didn't expect the news story, the first one we did in 2023, to be this bleak, but here we go, everybody. Do you want to see some other fun ones, like the William Regal one? Go and watch them. I guess watch this one too. Number 1, sell the company. Starting off with the thing that is apparently happening, maybe, probably, who knows. But I mean, that is why Vince says he's coming back, after all, to finally initialize the sale of WWE. A WWE sale has been on the cards long before now, with potential suitors being touted since the late 2010s. Despite that, it has always felt hard to envisage Vince actually relinquishing his iron clutches over his baby. By baby, I mean the company, of course, not Stephanie or Shane. Last year, many at the executive level of WWE clearly didn't think it was right to allow Vince back. So what other way could Vince get back all his old power? Quite simply, if he helps push through a nice lucrative sale, the company goes private, he then proceeds to convince the new owners that he is the man to take WWE forward. That's gonna do it, even though it's by no means a done deal like it has been reported. That's why people latched onto the whole Saudi ownership rumors so hard, because of course that private ownership would keep Vince's gnarled grip on the steering wheel. Number 2, release talent and employees. Perhaps the number one thing that the Vince McMahon regime was notorious for in its final years. The pandemic era saw WWE brutally release over 120 talent between 2020 and 2021, all despite the company recording record high profits in that time. Not all releases stick though, do they, Mr. McMahon? Vince's departure immediately saw the return of many notable casualties of this era, such as Bray Wyatt, Braun Strowman, Karrion Kross, etc., while others who let their contracts expire, such as Johnny Gargano, chose to make their returns under specifically Triple H's leadership. However, to make the company as attractive a proposition as possible to potential buyers, some more of WWE's patented budget cutting may be inevitable. If Vince does indeed have any say in these decisions leading up to a sale, what is stopping him from exerting his power by refiring many of the same individuals Hunter brought back on board? It just seems like something a man with a T-Rex skull on his wall might do. Number 3, make SmackDown 3 hours. In conjunction with the overall sale of the company comes the renegotiation of WWE's all-important TV deals for USA Network's Raw and NXT and Fox's SmackDown. The rights carry a massive amount of value to any prospective buyer, well over $2 billion across both deals. The importance of renegotiating the TV contracts was, along with the sale of the company, the other major reason Vince saw his return to be urgent. It had to happen right this minute, or WWE would just apparently Thanos straight out of existence. Nobody else could possibly negotiate without Grandpa McMahon casually forgetting the huge role, I don't know, Nick Khan had in negotiating said TV deals. Anyway, if Vince doesn't manage to push a sale through this year, the TV rights will need to be renegotiated regardless, and one of the things that Vince could do to boost the value of his TV deals further is by proposing adding an extra hour of television for Fox's SmackDown to those television execs, because, you know, the third hour of Raw is very lucrative, and also it's the worst. To be clear, adding an extra hour to SmackDown would be terrible. Please don't do this. Please, no one do this. And speaking of horrible ideas, number 4, become head of creative again. I mean, if we're honest, apart from not wanting WWE to be helmed by a regime that proceeds over countless human rights abuses, the biggest concern in seeing Vince back and all the news recently is that creative's going to be bad again. Now, don't get us wrong, the Triple H era of WWE creative hasn't been flawless. Of course it hasn't, but it sure as hell has beaten the nonsensical drivel that Vince used to force us to watch from week to week to week. Endless rematch. Look, that may be slightly harsh. I mean, Vince's creative wasn't always bad either, but try and justify some of the decisions he was making in his latter years. Goldberg beating The Fiend to win the Universal Championship, pushing Roman Reigns to happy-go-lucky babyface for 6 years. Karrion Kross's Gimp mask, Keith Bearcat Lee, which is unforgivable, but it's less the singularly bad ideas and more just the terrible reoccurring things that come up in his process, renaming established characters, tearing up scripts last minute, losing faith in talent for ridiculous, arbitrary reasons. We've all come to accept these things, and then we all came to not accept them. And while sources are claiming that Vince's return is purely administrative, does anyone buy that? I mean, Steph's already gone. Trips' position now seems even more fragile, and let's go into more detail on that. Number 5, demote Triple H. If Vince does indeed work his way back into the company's day-to-day, then surely it's a matter of time before he snatches Triple H's headset away from him and boots him out of gorilla position. I mean, he has done it before with NXT. What is to stop him from doing it again? I mean, how do you think Vince feels about Triple H taking his position and pretty much reversing all of his handiwork within weeks, or bringing back all of the talent that Vince had no place for? How about pushing guys that Vince couldn't come up with creative for, like Gunther? Vince McMahon has built an empire out of power plays, and what bigger statement could there be than reshuffling his executives so he ends up back at the top of the totem pole while Hunter plummets down to the bottom? With the hiring of Vince-era executives George Barrios and Michelle Wilson, Vince already has 2 voices that are going to support his decision-making. What's to stop Vince from hiring more supportive voices, some yes men, if you will? Which leads us on to our next entry. Number 6, re-sign John Laurinaitis. I mean, while we're talking about darkest timeline scenarios, how about Johnny Ace? Vince's ride-or-die right-hand man John Laurinaitis may not be appreciative of the way Vince threw him under the bus when the allegations surfaced last year, but I'm sure Johnny would forgive him. I mean, who is John Laurinaitis without Vince McMahon? The Bella's father-in-law? If Vince is to rebuild his old squad, then surely there's room for Mr. People Power. There's nobody within Vince's echo chamber who can fill that quintessential yes-man void quite like Johnny. Number 7, a new hiring system. In the aftermath of Triple H's NXT losing the Wednesday Night War to AEW Dynamite, the black and gold brand that Triple H had built along with its recruitment strategy, they were flushed down the drain. When NXT 2.0 was born in September 2021, the approach seemed to shift towards younger, less proven commodities instead of experienced and well-traveled indie talent. The NIL program, standing for Next in Line, was used to source gifted college athletes and morph them into WWE superstars for the future. Now, to be fair, while we can all agree that Triple H's approach led to much more immediately eye-catching performances from talent who usually had a wealth of experience prior to signing, the nil approach had its benefits as well, namely in developing homegrown WWE talent that could potentially carry the company forward for decades. Like, NXT 2.0 hasn't been all bad. It just hasn't, as much as some of us, me included, may have wanted it to be. On the flip side, according to Dave Meltzer, the lack of experience of many of the nil recruits led to a lot of injuries as a result, a warning sign that there needs to be a balance struck between experience and promise. This is something that Triple H seems to be keen to do by not immediately binning off the talent that's flourished during the 2.0 era, but also not neglecting the incredible wealth of talent that exists outside of WWE, as we have seen with the signing of Dragon Lee. But if Vince has his way, the Dragon Lees of the world may not stand a hope in hell of getting a fair shake in WWE. But while we're speaking about developmental, let's end with number 8, NXT 3.0. I mean, as stupid as it sounds, and it is a stupid idea, NXT 2.0 is now just NXT once again. So if Vince wants another dramatic shakeup of the brand, what other way can there be to communicate that to viewers and to slap a 3.0 on it and somehow introduce a color scheme that's even more harsh on the eyes than the last one? I don't know, maybe make the whole thing have a photo negative filter. NXT has finally began to find its own identity again under HBK and Triple H's reign, and it's not perfect, but it does genuinely feel like a third brand rather than developmental, with frequent crossovers and actual recognition from main roster commentators that recognize and identify storyline continuity between the shows. It's not an island out on its own anymore. It was good while it lasted, I suppose. Can't wait for Dragon Lee to form Lucha House Party 2.0 on NXT 3.0. Now, I know what you're thinking. A lot of this list has been all doom and gloom, but forgive us. This just feels like a bleak time right now. Like WWE was something to get excited about. And I can't help but be disappointed because all this is happening around the Royal Rumble. And I was really looking forward to last year's Royal Rumble being wiped from our memories by this one. Hopefully that will be the case. Hopefully Triple H gets to maintain the good work he's doing. And for God's sake, hopefully Sammy gets to have his blow off that he bloody well deserves. Anyway, that's my thoughts. What do you think is going to happen under Vince McMahon's new tenure in WWE? Let's try and be optimistic. I don't know. Rage seems to only have so much use in this world before it just hurts you more than it hurts anyone that you actually feel deserves it. Well then, see you next week. Jam that jam.